Good day everyone, we are going to discuss the information control issue. This is the summary of article authored by Adam Ferrer, a senior research fellow at the Mercator Center at George Mason University. The Obama administration is inching closer towards adopting a new internet regulation regime. Information controller games aims to protect against four theoretical harms: objectable content, defamation, copyright, and privacy. He says there are many arguments for and against various form and information control. Media contents and information distribution outlets are increasingly being unbundled for their traditional distribution platforms. The sheer volume of media and communication activities taking place today also complicates regulatory efforts. Digital speech and content dissemination greatly complicates government effort to control information flows. From a normative perspective, there are many arguments for and against various forms of information control. The reasons typically given from why society might want to impose regulation on the internet or other communication channel includes privacy, content control, defamation, and copyright protection, among others. There are lots of good normative arguments in favor of information control regimes limiting speech. Efforts to control information today are greatly complicated by problems associated with privacy and other issues. In the internet age, governments are increasingly seeking to control information flows. This can be done through surveillance, centralized filtering, strictly liabilities regime, government ownership of key facilities or companies, and etc. We endorse effort to use this regulatory approach to deal with child pornography and extreme form of copyright piracy. I would like to suggest that enforcing a privacy information control regime will be more complex than the regime need to control information flows for content defamation and copyright. Enforcement problem will also be complicated by the subjectivity of privacy norms from one individual to another, as well as how these norms change over time. Main point: the Obama administration is closer to adopting a new internet regulatory regimes to control information that might be associated with privacy and other issues. Example: child pornography, extreme copyright piracy. Enforcing the regimes can be challenged by differing norms and how the norm change over time. Information control issue.
Convergence. Convergence is the media content information distribution outlets are blurring together today, thanks to the rise of myriad new technologies and competitors. These new technologies and competitors generally ignore or reject the distribution-based distinction and limitations of the past. In other words, convergence means that media content is increasingly being unbundled from its traditional distribution platforms and finding many paths to the consumers. As a result of this development, it is now possible to disseminate, find, or consume the same content or information via multiple devices or distribution networks. In this way, convergence complicates efforts to create effective information control regimes. For example, a user interacts with convergence devices such as smart television or TV to access the content that are distributed over a network. A smart TV has combined the function of a traditional TV, a computer, and several other devices that used to have one specific purpose.
Scale. In the past, the reach of speech and information was limited by geographic, technological, and cultural language considerations. Today, by contrast, media can now flow across the globe at the click of the button. Because of the dramatic expansion of internet access and broadband connectivity, while restrictions by nation-states are still possible, the scale of modern digital speech and content dissemination greatly complicates government efforts to control information flows. While important cultural language barrier remains, many traditional geographic and technological limitations are fading away. As New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman argues, the world is becoming more flat or interconnected. The scale of modern digital media content and operation will greatly complicate government efforts to impose community standards on one type of content distribution outlet given by the borderless nature of most modern media.
Volume. The sheer volume of media and communications activity taking place today also complicates regulatory efforts. In simple terms, there's just too much staff for regulators to police today relative to the past. So as of 2002, Blue Ribbon panel assembled by the National Research Council to examine the regulations objectionable content concluded the volume of informations on the internet is so large and changes so rapidly, and it's simply impractical for human being to evaluate every discrete piece of information for inappropriateness. While it may have been possible to oversee a handful of newspapers or TV and radio stations in each community or country in the past, today's electronic media universe is so community or country in the past. Today's electronic media universe is so diverse and enormous and evolving too quickly that content controls significantly complicate enforcement burdens. So when you say volume, so the volume is the when you say the informations in the internet were overwhelming, that some of it makes no sense or may deceive people from what is the truth. So perhaps how large the informations the internet may be provided causes some to neglect what seems to be important and accept what seems to be the most talked piece of information. So that's what I understand about volume. And for example, like when you get informations from the internet, like Facebook, Google, or other platforms of other platforms that may you take informations in a positive and negative way. So yeah, that's volume for me.
Unprecedented individual empowerment or user generation of content. In this new world in which every man, woman, and child can be a one-person publishing house or self-broadcaster, restriction on viewing, difficult to uploading and downloading will become increasingly difficult to devise and enforce. By comparison, few of those opportunities were available to the citizenry in the past.